Okay, now let's talk about entrepreneurs in context of the inventor or the service provider. Okay, the concept of entrepreneurship is the aggregation or assembly of resources around the opportunity, the idea, the value proposition. And this assembly of resources is what allows the carrying out of the value proposition itself. Now, stated in plain terms, somebody needs their grass cut. Well, I can be the inventor or the service provider myself. I can go out and cut the individual's grass. Now, if I want to build a venture around that and grow, there's a limited amount of time and ability that I have to actually do that service or build a product or whatever. So in that way, me as the entrepreneur, I need to step back and work on rather than in my business. I need to assemble the resources necessary to bring about that value proposition. Now, assembling those resources could mean purchasing additional equipment, hiring individuals to man that equipment and to carry out the service or to build the product that we are distributing or using or selling or making available to our end users. Now, in that way, I am responsible for assembling those resources. One of the primary functions of the entrepreneur is to assemble the financial resources to allow for the aggregation of the physical resources to actually carry out the value proposition. So in that way, the entrepreneur is not always, and quite frankly, in startup ventures or growth-based ventures, is almost never the actual service provider or the actual inventor themselves. They're completely separate from that because they have the task of building or growing the business. Now, I'm not saying that the entrepreneur does not start out as the service provider or the inventor. This provides the background information or the knowledge to help understand the concept, the value proposition, the opportunity that exists, and then to step back and to assemble the resources necessary to carry that out. And in many ventures, you'll have one of the founders that remains in that role as service provider or inventor, and they somehow manage or oversee the other individuals or other resources involved in that, while the entrepreneur steps aside and works on the assembly of resources or making available those resources to carry out the value proposition. Now, this is extremely important because as any business grows, this necessarily has to happen. It's rare cases that the individual can continue doing within the business instead of stepping aside and working on the business. So this is a definite turning point or point in the evolution or life cycle of the business that is important to understand up front. And as is the case in most startup ventures, the entrepreneurs begin with that proposition very early in the life cycle, that they realize that they have to step back, employ outside resources, outside funds to massively scale or grow the operations that do create the value proposition. So I oftentimes ask my students, do you love your product or service or idea? Generally the hands go up in the room, yes. Well, that is not a necessity. Okay, lots of times the entrepreneur will love the process, the assembly of resources, the idea that they are doing what is necessary to bring that value proposition about. So oftentimes, if they're too infatuated by their idea, they cannot look at it objectively. They cannot say that these are the features we need versus these are the features we don't need. We shouldn't pursue this because the cost benefit doesn't line up with what we need at this point, with the resources that we have to bring about those additional features in the product or those additional services. So the entrepreneur generally has to be extremely objective. Well, the service provider, or especially the inventor, oftentimes cannot, or they have extreme difficulty being objective when reviewing their product or service. They just want to make it better, 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 better without an eye towards, is it cost feasible? Is it the minimum viable product that we have to move out to the customer, client, or end user at this point? So that's an important role of the entrepreneur to, in many ways, be the voice of reason or the objective observer of the process to say, hey, no, this is not what we should be doing at this point. This is what we should be doing at this point. We need to cut here. We need to assemble there, etc. So, If you love your idea, wonderful, but it's absolutely not necessary. What you should love is the idea or what you're trying to do, the creation of new value that previously did not exist.